We'll start off by all of you continuing to address this question. And this is just to prime you. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So why are you most excited in joining us today as a part of Líderes? Please include that in your chat box. For those I haven't met personally or in person, I know you've received a lot of emails from me. My name is JP Sanchez. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Executive Director for Lmsa National. I also serve as the Executive Associate Vice Chancellor for the Health Sciences Center, specifically the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Health Sciences Center at the University of New Mexico. And accompanied by a number of fellows who are part of the Lmsa National, Donald Rodriguez. And Donald, if you're on, if you could introduce yourself.
Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, great. So good morning, everyone. As Dr. Sanchez mentioned, my name is Donald Rodriguez. I serve as the coordinator for the National Center for Lmsa Leadership and Advancement. I am also a sixth-year MD PhD student at the University of Chicago and immediate past president for Lmsa. Happy to be with you all and happy to get this program going.
Thank you, Donald. And Donald has also been sending you a lot of emails and really has been crucial for the design implementation of this seminar. So please give him a huge round of applause. We'll be thanking him for his efforts. So thank you again, Donald. I want to introduce another colleague, another fellow of ours, Ryan Adams. And Ryan, if you could introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Adams. I'm a third-year medical student at McGovern Medical School, and today I'm going to be serving as your tech support behind the scenes. If you need help with PowerPoints, volume, or anything like that, just reach out or just say Ryan in the Zoom room, and I'll handle it.
Just two of many of the fellows that you'll be meeting today that eventually you want to recruit for one of your programs, whether it's residency, fellowship, as a faculty member, or future dean of your schools. So thank you. You are the inaugural group of the Latina, Latino, Latinx Identity Development, Empowerment, and Resources Seminar. This is the first time that this program is being offered, and I'm so grateful that close to 175 individuals have signed up to be a part of today's seminar. Myself and Donald do not have any disclaimers to disclose. As a reminder, the objectives of the next 2 days is to help you and all of us become more informed about the representation of our community within academic medicine. And when I say our community, those individuals who identify as Hispanic, Latina, Latino, Latinx, and or of Spanish origin. And the plus represents the many other terms that we use to identify ourselves. So sometimes as a child of two parents from Puerto Rico who grew up in the Bronx, I also call myself Puerto Rican or Nuyorican, and many of us have other terms of that a tie with our national identity. A second objective of today's seminar is to list the barriers and facilitators that influence our career advancement within academic medicine, review the criteria for appointment, promotion, and tenure within the academy, as well as achieving higher appointments, describing and developing key professional competencies to facilitate our career advancement, and of course, expanding our network. I want us to take a moment and recognize and applaud our planning committee members that you can see here. Many of them will also serve as our moderators and speakers. So if we could give them a round of applause and a thank you. Just to go over some ground rules and considerations over the next 2 days. Identity is such an important component of these discussions and for Lmsa as well. I ask us not to assume another individual's identity. I encourage you all to share who you are, your lived experiences, and share your own identity. A term, an umbrella term that I would like to introduce to all of you is LHS Plus. And this gives recognition of the different terms that we do use within our community, whether it's identifying as Latina, Latino, Latinx, and this should be a capital L here, Hispanic, and or of Spanish origin, but as mentioned, many of the other terms that may associate us with a certain ethnic or national identity. LHS Plus is a play off of or aligns well in a comparable fashion with LGBTQ+, which many of you know stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and other identities. And really, LHS Plus is a way of reflecting and acknowledging our heterogeneity of terms reflective of communities of different geographic locations, whether it's Caribbean, North, Central, or South America and Spain, and our Spanish language ancestry. But it also recognizes historical terms such as Latino, Latina, Hispanic, which you'll recognize in being a part of standardized questions on surveys like the Lmsa MSQ, Matriculating Student Questionnaire, Graduation Questionnaire, or even the Faculty Forward Questionnaire, and emerging generational and non-binary terms like Latinx. And I already commented on what the plus represents. So I encourage you all, once again, use the term that you feel most comfortable with and also consider using LHS Plus when we talk about the broader group. We want this to be interactive. We want you to listen actively, also step forward with your experiences, speak from your own experience. Do not be afraid to respectively challenge one another, but refrain from personal attacks, participate to the fullest. Instead of invalidating someone else's story with your own spin, share your own story and experience. The goal is not to agree always, but to gain a deeper understanding. Be conscious of body language and nonverbal responses. Remember to edit your Zoom name. And lastly, and most importantly, le invitamos a hablar en español, Spanglish, or Inglés. These are our languages, so please feel comfortable and speak in the languages that bring forward your lived experiences the most. I just want to start off with a little bit of history. As you know, Lmsa is rooted in a history of over 50 years. And just taking us back to 1972, one of the originating entities of Lmsa National was titled the Boricua Health Organization, which was formed in 1972 at Harvard Medical School. And in part, it was formed in response to the need for Latino medical students to organize against health discrimination, both inside and outside of our educational institutions. And I know many of us can resonate that today, still, we witness and experience much discrimination within and outside of our educational institutions. And with this acknowledgement of our origins back in 1972, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Emilio Carrillo, who is one of the founders of BHO back in 1972. He currently serves as a clinical associate professor in medicine, as well as in epidemiology and health services research at Weill Cornell Medical College. So as we talk about líderes today, and as we honor the history of Lmsa, I want us all to give special thanks to Dr. Emilio Carrillo, and I just want to afford him an opportunity to share a couple of words right now. Dr. Carrillo.
Carrillo, you're muted.
How about now?
Yes. I'd like to say greetings, hello to all of you, many of you whom I don't know. I congratulate all of us for how far we've come. Looking at the agenda yesterday, I was just blown away by the depth and breadth of Latino medical leadership. It's phenomenal. And I could not be more proud of us than I am now. In accepting this recognition as one of the OHS plus, or I should say, one of the OGs, original gangsters, up against the tide of inequity and basically abuse of our communities that had and still have very poor medical resources. I accept not for myself, just for myself, but also for the late Helen Rodriguez Trias, Dr. Trias, who was one of the very few doctor role models that we had. I was ready to quit after first year because I was so overwhelmed by all the cultural clashes and the oppressive mood. She took me in for a summer internship in Lincoln Hospital, where she was chief of pediatrics. And I worked there with the people, with Helen, and just seeing her commitment and seeing our people, how much care they need and what we can do as doctors. That brought me right back to year 2, and here I am. Also, I want to, I accept also for Luis Carden Acosta, the late Luis Carden Acosta, who was the young lord. I mean, he was a original young lord whom some of you can pull out your Google and look it up. Some of you may remember hearing about it. These were the Black Panthers of the Latino community in New York. There were young people who stood up and demonstrated and basically said, we have needs to be met and we need to be heard. And Luis was a minister in the Lord, and he joined us. He was a student with us at Harvard for half the first year, but continued to be in touch with us throughout the years. And of course, my classmate and dear buddy, Jaime Rivera, with whom I really couldn't have gone through it. I mean, the two of us were, as we say, uña y carne. We got through it, and we came in. We had a vision. We didn't know how it would come, and we didn't know if it would come and how it would come. But we had a vision that we wanted to improve the health of our communities, and we had determination. We were at the tail end of the 60s, when really there was a real mass uprising of civil rights and anti-war efforts that basically took us to the boundaries of the medical field. And we were there, we were the only ones, and we had to survive. So a lot of the rationale for the beginning of this organization that has evolved and grown and grown and grown and was survival. I mean, here we were, two Latinos in a vast sea of non-Latinos who basically were trying to hold on to our culture, trying to hold on to our vision. And we did that by coming together, by organizing and by coming together and by becoming one. We survived. We made it through medical school, and we passed that message on to those that come after us. We were fueled by the inequities. We were fueled by the need to move forward. And we had a very simple plan. I mean, right now, you're at another level of development. You're like totally in a very, very privileged position. We didn't have that. We basically had a 3-point plan. We wanted to recruit, retain, and orient. That's all. Very simple, very simple. Recruit, retain, and orient. The more of us were there, the more we were in company, the more we were in community, the more we could survive. And the more of us that were there, the more of us could put our heads together and together come and move forward. We started chapters. We started the first chapter at Harvard. With our friends that we met in dancing clubs from in BU, Boston University. We met these other Latinos and we went with them and we started in BU. We started at Tufts. And in every one of them, we basically went to the deans and said, look, we need Latinos. We need OHS to be part of our communities, to be part of our schools. And we put pressure. I mean, we really were OGs. I mean, we went to the press, we leaked things, we had demonstrations, we broke community, we brought the television cameras. We did it. I mean, the tricks we had learned in the 60s, we brought to bear. And lo and behold, the deans, they said, okay, all right, we'll take 2 next year, and et cetera, et cetera. So we basically got the engine going. And Helen Rodriguez, who was, as I mentioned, our mentor in New York, said, speaking with Emilio, let's go beyond Boston. Let's do something in New York. So Helen organized basically a conference in New York City, where we had the schools, I think it was 5 of the schools represented by at least 1 or 2 people. And at the time, we basically talked about bringing in more. We went to New Jersey, we went to Philly. We basically began to metastasize and really grow. And here we are. This three-point simple plan has taken us very far. Right now, it is too primitive. It is like basically pencil and paper. Right now, we are getting ready for holograms. We're going far, far forward. And I'm just thrilled to be standing here and to be able to represent Helen, Luis, and Jaime. And thank you for recognizing our humble beginnings.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Carrillo, for starting us off 50 years ago and bringing us together today, 50 years later. If we could give Dr. Carrillo a huge round of applause and thank you. And we'll be seeing him, God willing, at the 50th anniversary in Philadelphia, March 2022. So as you can see here, over the past 50 years, with the roots at under Dr. Carrillo and many at Harvard Medical School, Lmsa went on to develop chapters across the country, with the Chicano Latino Medical Student Association being formed in the West in 1982, the Latino Midwest Medical Student Association being formed in 1990, counterparts in the Southeast in 2005 and in the Southwest in 2007, bringing us finally to Lmsa being a 501c3 organization today. But it's important to note that our students didn't work and live in isolation. As you know, all chapters must have faculty advisors, and our faculty advisors are an important cohort of leaders for our students within our institutions as well as outside. And many of you serve in that capacity. This is the current leadership structure of Lmsa. This is something that has evolved over 50 years. And now we not only have faculty and staff who serve as advisors on the chapter level, we also have leaders on the regional level, as well as a faculty physician advisory council on the national level. And this past year, we launched a new center, the National Center for Lmsa Leadership and Advancement. And here you can see the 17 osteopathic and allopathic medical schools who have joined us in addressing the underrepresentation of LHS Plus across the spectrum. We do know that the struggle continues. These numbers are slightly outdated. Roughly about 18 to 19% of the US population identifies as LHS plus. Currently, within our allopathic medical schools, roughly 11% of our medical students are LHS plus, and in our osteopathic medical schools, it's roughly 5%. Our residents are approximately 8% LHS plus. Our faculty within our allopathic medical schools are roughly 5 to 6%, and our faculty and senior leadership that are LHS plus is approximately 4%. This is a slightly outdated study that was conducted by you, but I think much of the trends that you see here hold true today. When you look at us as a community, the LHS Plus community, we are markedly underrepresented in the senior leadership roles of full professor, chairs, and of deans of our medical schools. Back in 2019, a group of GDI members, GDI represents diversity and inclusion.
Why did you download this into a one?
I'm gonna, I believe someone is unmuted. So if you wouldn't mind muting yourself. So back in 2019, a informal survey was conducted amongst LCME accredited allopathic medical schools, and it was found that 8 deans of LCME accredited medical schools were LHS Plus identified. Currently, to my knowledge, there are only 5 deans of allopathic medical schools that are LHS Plus identified. And can anyone unmute themselves and touch upon any commonalities between 4 of the 5?
They're from Puerto Rico.
Thank you, Dr. Acosta. So 4 of the 5 current of all of the accredited, LCME accredited allopathic medical schools across the country, 4 of the 5 LHS Plus identified are in Puerto Rico, as you can see here. The only one on the mainland is Dr. Saxton, who is the dean at Florida International College of Medicine in Miami. I want to take a moment to recognize 2 important leaders and organizations who have partnered for a long time with Lmsa to support the career advancement of LHS Plus identified faculty and staff and senior leaders. First, I would like to recognize a dear friend and colleague to many of us, if not all of us, Dr. Elena Rios, who serves as the president and CEO of NHMA, as well as the president of the National Hispanic Health Foundation. And as you know, NHMA was founded in 1994 as a nonprofit association to represent the interests of over 50,000 licensed Hispanic physicians in the US. NHMA is dedicated to empowering Hispanic physicians to be leaders who will help eliminate health disparities and improve the health of Hispanics. And with that, Dr. Rios, if you would mind sharing a few words.
Yeah, thank you, JP. And it's an honor to be here with all of you leaders in academic medicine. And I hope with NHMA and the National Hispanic Medical Association that we can work more closely together. We did start a medical school liaison program about 5 years ago, and with Lmsa chapters, and we're very interested in our Council of Residents developing resident representatives in the medical schools, especially those medical schools that are connected to our 17 chapters around the country. But I just wanted to say, just like Emilio did, and Emilio was on our board, thank you, Emilio, and also Gus, we in California had a different history. Our history starts in the 1960s. In 1968, Dr. Bob Montoya and David Hayes Bautista and Dr. Frank Mesa, who died about a year and a half ago, they started the National Chicano Health Organization. In California, the Mexican Americans are known as Chicanos. I went to Stanford University in 1973, and I would have been the last class of the representatives to the NCHO organization, but it had finished its HCOP grant. Kathy Flores was the last representative from Stanford University to NCHO. NCHO's headquarters were in Denver, and they invited undergraduate students from across the country to join together. They all had one thing in common. They wanted to improve the health of their communities. Frank Mesa, just like Emilio mentioned, was part of the Brown Berets of East Los Angeles and started a community clinic that's now known as Ultimate Health Services, probably one of the largest FQHCs in the country. In terms of the history there, I think the Latino students that were part of NCHO were not necessarily medical students. They were college kids. and that they wanted to go into public health and advocacy and medical careers. Dr. Bob Montoya became a leader within the state of California and worked with different medical schools. He's still there in Sacramento. And Dr. David Hayes Bautista became a tenured professor at Berkeley's School of Public Health, and then went to UCLA, where he runs the med, has been very instrumental with the leadership of recruitment of Latino students to UCLA. And Frank, like I said, Frank Nhma died. Others then went on. In 1977, the La Rama organization, La Raza Medical Student Association, was started by the Stanford medical students. Jose Arevalo, who now works for Sutter Healthcare in Sacramento and is also the president of the Latino Physicians of California, was the founder, among others, from Salinas and San Jose. That happened in 1977. I had just graduated from Stanford, so I did not get involved with La Rama, but I was a non-traditional student. I went to public health school first, actually worked as an intern in Washington, DC, and worked as an intern in Sacramento, California, where I actually met Dr. Bob Montoya. And when I went to medical school in 1982, the leaders of 21 different Latinos, who were all leaders from the undergraduate community of California, I'm going to say CCMs in Southern California and CHE groups in Northern California, the Chicanos for Community Medicine and the Chicanos for Health Education. These are the 25 pre-med groups in California that existed in the 1960s and 70s. They still exist. We got them all together by a UCLA class, 21, couldn't believe it. And everybody was very excited about being leaders in medical school to continue the recruitment and the connection to and mentoring to their students. And it was a few of us, one of whom, whose daughter is now the policy director of Lmsa, Camila Hurtado. Her mother, Lorraine Gutierrez, was one of our medical students. Other medical students like Juanita Lopez and Yolanda, and a lot of us were very interested in working with La Rama. Only when we went to the La Rama retreat, we found that the La Rama organization, which was started as a medical student group, had become residents and doctors, and they were no longer interested in the medical student group. So we started our own. We started the California Chicano Latino Medical Student Association with all the medical schools of California, except for Loma Linda. They never did join, and not part of the other states. I think maybe New Mexico came in at one point. But anyway, that was 1983 when we finally started the name and the bylaws and the leadership with our April-May graduation, quarterly meetings, board meetings, leadership meeting at the beginning of the year. The CMSA organization shared our bylaws with medical students in Chicago at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And we also shared work with our sister group in San Antonio called TMOMS, the Texas Association of Mexican American Medical Students. Because I had worked at the Office of Statewide Health Planning as a graduate student. We got a grant from them to start our Super Network program, which was all the medical schools and the CCMs and CHES of California having mentoring program. We gave that proposal to Texas, and they started something else called MedPrep. Anyway, just to fast forward, in 1987, as I was graduating from medical school, I got a call from Javier Becerra's wife. Javier and I went to college together. His wife was also from Stanford. Javier is now the secretary of HHS. His wife, Carolina Reyes, was at Harvard, went to an organization of student representatives from the Lmsa and met with the medical student leaders from AMA and AFP and SNMA, and said, hey, I just came to from this meeting of presidents and I didn't see any Latinos. Little did she know that Boricua Health Organization was part of the group. Anyway, CMSA leaders at the time, Yolanda and Matt who are now in Fresno, they went to the next meeting in 1987 and took the Texas students, met the Boricua students. They came back from that meeting. I had become an intern in internal medicine, and they asked if I could help them with connecting with phone calls, and they actually started a newsletter. And that organization was created in 1987, and it was called the National Latin American Medical Students Network. And it may have the name a little wrong. And then we got invited to Washington, D.C. to a National Health Service Corps meeting to be able to introduce medical students to the country. Jorge Girodi was instrumental in that meeting. And he was from the University of Illinois. He was still is a very big influence for medical students as an administrator. And anyway, that meeting happened maybe at around 1991 or so, or 1990, 91. And I think it was 1990. But anyway, just to, and I'll finish here. We got together with Jorge and decided to go to Chicago. And the University of Illinois, Chicago hosted the meeting where we got the Lmsa bylaws, connected the dots and put 5 regions together on a map and formalized the organization. And this organization then included the beginning of the Midwest Latino medical students, the Tamams, the CMSA, and the Boricua group. There was no Southeast group at the time. And the leadership, again, continued their National Association of Latin American Medical Students. They kind of changed the name a little bit, slightly. And then I think the most important thing that happened is that we had 3 different advisors at that meeting. One from New Jersey, Margie Beltran from UC Davis, who since died, and Jorge Girodi. And they were all Hispanic centers of excellence who wanted to create the support and the system for the Latino medical students organization. And that was the beginning of the connection. And I think that after that, in 1992, we had the first national conference of all these medical students. CMSA had a conference, and we also invited Henry Cisneros to be our dinner speaker. And Helen Rodriguez Trias was our plenary speaker from New York. Jane Delgado was another speaker from Washington, D.C. And little did I know that a year later, I would be asked to go to the White House. So with these connections in the White House, I invited doctors from New York and Chicago and Texas and Florida and California to come and join the Healthcare Reform Task Force of Hillary Clinton, where I was working. And by the end of that year, we decided, we're not medical students anymore. We need to create a National Hispanic Medical Association and work with the medical students and continue to mentor and support what became Lmsa later on. But anyway, that's really the story that I know in terms of my history with the development. And in 1993, we got our attorneys, we got our consultants, and we incorporated in 1994. I was living in California. Luis Estevez was from New York, and Robert Reyna was from Texas. We were the 3 original board members of NHMA. I got a job at HHS and moved to Washington, D.C. at the very end of 94. And we have continued to work with Lmsa and everybody on the call, just to let you know, and I know JP are smiling. I know I've taken too much time, but I just want to invite everybody to continue to work together to develop our leadership, both academic and public health. And NHMA is now restarting our NHMA Leadership Fellowship next week with 20 doctors from around the country. We're funded for 5 years under CDC, and we're very, very impressed with how much history and accomplishments have happened through Lmsa and all of the doctors in academic medicine. But we have to do more to get leaders at the board level in all of our institutions, both public and private. And NHMA is really interested in doing what we can. We nominate our members every week to leadership positions. And we need you to help join us as NHMA leaders and members. And I'd be happy to meet with anybody about NHMA. And thank you for everything that everybody's done through the years in your own schools and institutions to continue our trajectory of leadership. And anyway, I'm going to stop there. And NHMA's website is nhmamd.org. And I'm still in Washington, D.C. I can't believe it. It's been 25 years or so, but still here. So thank you. Thank you all very much. Thanks, JP.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rios. If we could all give Dr. Rios a huge round of applause for her tireless efforts, along with Dr. Trujillo. Thank you, Dr. Rios. We just want to give quickly recognition to one additional organization, the Hispanic Serving Health Profession Schools. And we are accompanied by Dr. Roldan, who serves as the treasurer for HSHPS. She also serves as the associate dean for international affairs, and I believe now a full professor within the Department of Pathology. She will be speaking a little bit later on one of the panels, and in the interest of recouping some of the time and moving into our first session, Dr. Roldan, I'm just going to have you share a couple, like maybe a minute or two about HSHPS, and then we'll move into the first session. Dr. Roldan? No, if you may be muted. Okay, I know she was also taking care of the white coat ceremony at her institution. But as mentioned, she will be talking a little bit later. The Hispanic Serving Health Profession Schools is another organization, a cohort of academic health centers across the country who are dedicated for increasing representation of the LHS plus community, not only within our medical schools, but all of our health profession schools. So we want to thank HSHPS for their tireless efforts. With that, just want to open it up. If anyone has any questions about the program today before we go into our first session with our moderator, Dr. Carrie Byington. So any quick questions before we go into our first session? You could put it in the chat box or just unmute yourself.